You're listening to Stoic and Still, a gentle place for those who grow in silence and rise with quiet inner depth. Have you ever had the sinking feeling that no matter how good you are, it's never enough? That you give, you help, you accommodate, you stay quiet, you smile through the discomfort, yet somehow it's always you who ends up feeling invisible? That the more you offer your kindness, the more it is expected and the less it is appreciated. There is a weight that comes with always trying to be a good person, and it doesn't always look like suffering. Sometimes it looks like politeness. Sometimes it looks like compliance. But beneath it is a quiet exhaustion, the kind of fatigue that doesn't come from doing too much, but from never being allowed to be fully yourself. What if I told you that this kind of goodness isn't really goodness at all? What if, instead of protecting you, it's what's making you disappear? You see, from a very young age, you were taught that being nice is noble, that if you're kind, people will like you, that if you're humble, others will respect you, that if you avoid conflict, you'll be safe. The message was simple: be good, and good things will come. So you learned how to be agreeable. You smiled when you wanted to cry. You apologized when someone else hurt you. You stayed quiet when your soul was screaming. You molded yourself into something digestible, palatable, someone easy to be around. And for a while, it worked. You avoided confrontation. You kept the peace. You were praised for your manners, for your understanding, for your patience. But slowly, something inside you began to die. Not all at once. Not loudly, but piece by piece, moment by moment, with every boundary you allowed to be crossed, every truth you buried, every need you silenced, something sacred was lost. And now you're here, tired. Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. A tiredness that comes from being everything for everyone and nothing for yourself. You've tried so hard to be good, and yet deep down, you're starting to realize something dangerous. The world does not reward kindness. It rewards strength. It rewards presence. It rewards boundaries. The more you give without asking, the more people take. The more you sacrifice, the more they expect. And when you finally reach your limit, when you dare to say no, they call you difficult. They say you've changed. But the truth is, you're just waking up. You're finally realizing that being good is not the same as being respected. And that's where Machiavelli comes in, not as a cruel figure, but as a voice of brutal honesty. Niccolo Machiavelli is often misunderstood. People hear his name and think of manipulation, deception, ruthlessness. But at the core of his philosophy is not cruelty, it is clarity. He was one of the first to strip away the illusions of morality and look at power for what it really is, a game. And in this game, being good is not enough. Being honest is not enough. Being humble, loyal, selfless, none of it is enough if it makes you easy to discard. Machiavelli knew something we are only now beginning to understand, that the world does not operate on fairness. It operates on perception, on utility, on fear and respect. And while that may sound harsh, it is also freeing, because it means that your worth does not have to be tied to how much you give, how quietly you suffer, or how little space you take up. You don't have to keep proving your value through self-sacrifice. You don't have to keep earning love by shrinking yourself. You don't have to wear the mask of the good person if that mask is suffocating who you truly are. Because true goodness is not about always being agreeable. It's not about saying yes when you want to scream no. It's not about letting others violate your boundaries in the name of understanding. That's not kindness. That's fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being seen as selfish, fear of standing alone. There is a cost to being the good person all the time, and that cost is your soul. And if you don't start reclaiming your power, if you don't start honoring your own needs, your own voice, your own presence, then one day you will look in the mirror and see a stranger staring back at you. A version of yourself that was so busy pleasing the world, they forgot to become who they really are. So the question is not, how can I be a better person? The real question is, who am I when I stop trying to be liked? What truths would I speak if I wasn't afraid of losing approval? What choices would I make if I wasn't performing for others? What kind of strength would rise in me if I let go of the need to be seen as good? You see, the moment you stop trying to be a good person in the way the world defines it, is the moment you begin to become a whole person. That's the turning point. That's where dignity begins. That's where authenticity is born. Not in sweetness, but in honesty. Not in submission, but in sovereignty. And if you've come this far, if you're still here reading this, it means a part of you is ready. A part of you knows you were not born afraid of conflict. You were not born with a need to be agreeable. There was a time in your life, perhaps long ago, when your voice rose without shame, when your feelings were raw, pure, and unfiltered. But slowly, that changed. Not because your soul grew wiser, but because your environment taught you something dangerous. That to be loved, you had to comply. It starts so early, so subtly, that we barely notice it. As children, we are praised when we are quiet, when we smile, when we behave. We're told not to raise our voice, not to show anger, not to say no to adults, not to cry too loud, not to be difficult. We are taught to trade honesty for approval, to trade fire for stillness. And so we learn to betray ourselves, bit by bit, nod by nod, silence by silence. You remember those moments, don't you? When you wanted to say something but swallowed it instead. When you felt violated but smiled because you didn't want to seem dramatic. When you said yes, even though everything inside you was screaming no. That was not virtue. That was fear, disguised in manners. This is the lie that many live inside. That to be good, you must erase yourself. That to be accepted, you must not disturb others. That true character means pleasing everyone, even those who give you nothing in return. It becomes a reflex. You offer kindness before you are even asked. You rush to forgive before anyone apologizes. You carry emotional burdens that were never yours to begin with. And worst of all, you begin to believe that this is who you are, that your value lies in how useful, pleasant, and quiet you can be. But Machiavelli saw through this. He understood that in the world of power, those who erase themselves are not loved. They are used. Because no one respects a voice that doesn't speak. No one honors boundaries that are never drawn. And no one will value your presence if you are always trying to disappear. This is not to blame you. This is to reveal you, to hold up a mirror and show that the person you've become was not built on freedom, but on survival. You adapted, like any intelligent being would. You became who you had to be to stay safe, to be accepted, to be loved. But what once kept you safe is now keeping you stuck. You feel it in the way you hesitate to speak your truth. You feel it in the way your body tenses before you say no. You feel it in the guilt that follows when you choose yourself. That guilt is not a sign that you did something wrong. It is a symptom of a system that trained you to believe that self-respect is selfishness. But self-respect is not selfish. It is sacred. It is necessary. It is the foundation of any life that is truly yours. And now, perhaps for the first time, you're starting to see it. You're beginning to notice how your so-called kindness has often been a performance. How your empathy has sometimes been avoidance. How your understanding was really a way to keep peace, even when that peace was poison. This is the mask, the one Machiavelli warned us about. Not the mask of evil, but the mask of blind virtue. The one we wear to be accepted. The one we keep on so long, we forget we're wearing it. He wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, but few experience what you really are." And that is the tragedy of the people pleaser. That the world sees your smile, but never your sorrow. That they see your compliance, but never your capacity. That they applaud your silence, while your spirit is screaming inside. So what is the alternative? What is the way forward? It begins with one act, the removal of the mask. Not in anger, not in rebellion, but in truth. You begin to reclaim your inner life. You start by asking questions the old version of you was too afraid to face. What do I want, apart from what others expect? What do I feel beneath the layers of politeness? What have I been sacrificing in the name of being liked? Because you cannot become powerful if you are afraid to be disliked. You cannot become free if you are addicted to being good in the eyes of others. And you cannot become real until you stop performing. Yes, it's terrifying. Yes, it means losing the approval of those who only loved you when you were easy. Yes, it may shake your world. But what is the cost of staying asleep? To continue being praised for a version of you that isn't even real? To keep living a life built on pleasing everyone but yourself? Number. You deserve more than that. Not because you've earned it through sacrifice, but because you exist. That alone is enough. This is not about discarding your values. It is about finally living by them. Not to impress others, not to gain approval, but to honor your truth. Machiavelli was not against virtue. He was against blind virtue. He was against morality used as a leash. And when he wrote The Prince, he wasn't telling us to be cruel. He was warning us not to be weak. Because kindness without boundaries is not kindness. It is erasure. It is slow. There comes a moment in every awakening when the pain of staying the same finally outweighs the fear of change. You no longer want to be the person who smiles while being disrespected, who gives endlessly and receives silence in return, who is praised for being easy while silently withering away. And so, you ask yourself, how do I stop being this person? How do I become strong without becoming cold? How do I hold my heart in one hand and my boundaries in the other? The answer begins not with grand gestures, but with quiet, firm decisions. You begin by reclaiming something small but sacred, your voice. You say no, softly at first, maybe with trembling, but you say it. You say it when you're tired. You say it when you've given enough. You say it when your body says, stop. And something powerful begins to shift. The first time you set a boundary, you will feel guilt. That's normal. You've been trained to equate goodness with self-erasure. Saying no will feel like you are betraying someone. But what you're really doing is finally choosing not to betray yourself. And yes, people will notice. Some will pull away. Some will call you selfish. Some will say you've changed. And you know what? They're right. You are changing. You are finally coming back to yourself. You are remembering that love does not require your silence. That compassion does not demand your exhaustion. That peace does not mean swallowing every discomfort to make others comfortable. There is a form of kindness that is rooted not in fear, but in truth. Not in submission, but in strength. And that is the kindness you are learning now. Machiavelli understood that respect is not something you ask for. It is something you embody. And you do not embody it by being agreeable. You do it by becoming unshakable. He wrote that it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Not because he worshipped fear, but because he recognized that fear keeps people from crossing lines that love alone cannot protect. It was a call to dignity, not cruelty. And now, in this modern life, that truth still echoes. People respect those who are clear. People trust those who mean what they say. And people value those who are willing to walk away from what diminishes them. So what does that look like in practice? It means not explaining yourself to those who have already decided to misunderstand you. It means not begging for connection in places where you are only tolerated. It means no longer abandoning yourself in order to maintain relationships that survive only. You will begin to notice how your energy changes, how the weight you carried from trying to be liked begins to lift when you finally decide to be real. You'll feel lighter, not because you're doing less, but because you're doing what is true. That's the difference between effort that drains and effort that empowers. One empties you, the other builds you. You will also begin to see people differently. Those who love the submissive version of you may fade away, but others, those who see your strength and honor it, will come closer. These are the people who are not threatened by your voice, but inspired by it. These are the ones who do not need you to shrink so they can feel tall. And perhaps, for the first time, your relationships will be built not on dependency, but on mutual respect. This is what it means to stop being nice and start being whole. It means refusing to perform, refusing to earn what should be given freely. It means no longer living as a hostage to other people's comfort. Because true maturity is not about pleasing everyone. It is about knowing who you are and honoring that, even if it means being misunderstood. You will no longer fear being called selfish, because you'll know the difference between selfishness and self-respect. You'll no longer panic when someone is disappointed in you, because you'll stop seeing their disappointment as your responsibility. And you'll no longer crumble when you are criticized, because your worth will no longer depend on someone else's approval. This is not an easy path. It requires courage. It requires grief. The mourning of the old version of you that was built on pleasing, sacrificing, and surviving. But once you move through that grief, something extraordinary happens. You begin to experience a peace that doesn't come from avoiding conflict, but from finally standing in your truth. You become a person who is kind, but no longer compliant. Generous, but no longer depleted. Loving, but no longer dependent on being loved back. You become someone who can say, "I choose myself," without shame. And that is power. Machiavelli never asked you to be cruel. He simply dared you to stop being naive. And what is naivety, if not the belief that the world will treat you well simply because your heart is pure? Now, you know better. Now, you know that a pure heart must be protected, not with wool. There is a dangerous confusion that ruins the lives of many. The belief that to be good, one must be submissive, that to be a good person, you must be agreeable, forgiving, silent, and endlessly accommodating. That true virtue means never confronting, never disappointing, never taking up space. And this belief is not a personal flaw. It is a cultural design. You didn't invent it. You inherited it. For centuries, society has taught us a version of goodness that is less about strength and more about obedience. Be quiet. Be nice. Be humble. Be grateful, even when you're disrespected. Turn the other cheek. Give until it hurts. Swallow your feelings. Don't make a scene. This is not virtue. This is control. From schools to religions to workplaces, the message is the same. If you comply, you belong. If you resist, you are dangerous. So we internalize the lie. We begin to believe that conflict is inherently wrong, that anger is immoral, that putting ourselves first is selfish. But this belief doesn't lead to harmony. It leads to resentment, exhaustion, emptiness. You start to wonder why you're so drained all the time, why your kindness is never enough, why you're surrounded by people who take but rarely give. The answer is painful but clear. You were trained to confuse morality with self-abandonment. You were taught to feel proud of disappearing. And perhaps worst of all, you were praised for it. Because that's how the system works. When you are obedient, people around you are comfortable. When you are quiet, they don't have to change. When you are endlessly forgiving, they never have to be accountable. And when you call that behavior being a good person, they applaud you because your silence benefits them. This is why Machiavelli's message remains so radical. He wasn't rejecting morality, he was exposing the ways it is weaponized. He saw how rulers, institutions, and systems of power reward not virtue, but usefulness. He understood that being perceived as good is often more valuable than actually being good, and that true morality without wisdom becomes a trap, a beautiful cage where your integrity is slowly turned against you. That's why he warned us. If you try to be good in all situations, in a world where many are not good, you will be destroyed. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your goodness was naive. Because you thought that fairness alone could protect you. Because you believed that your intentions were enough. But the world does not run on intentions. It runs on energy, leverage, perception, and boundaries. You can have the kindest heart in the world, but if you don't know how to protect it, it will be used against you. And so, you must evolve. Not by abandoning your soul, but by anchoring it in strength. You must redefine what it means to be good, not as a person who pleases everyone, but as a person who lives in truth, who acts with clarity, who offers love, but never at the cost of dignity. Because true goodness has teeth. It can say no. It can walk away. It can stand alone. True goodness is not about how softly you speak. It's about how solidly you stand. It does not bow to manipulation. It does not cower in the face of discomfort. It speaks, even when the voice shakes. And this is the paradox. When you stop trying so hard to be a good person, you actually become a better one. Not better by the standards of others, but better by the truth of your own soul. You become honest, whole, responsible for yourself. And from that place, your goodness is no longer a mask. It's your essence. It flows from alignment, not from fear. You stop saying yes when you mean no. You stop trying to fix people who don't want to change. You stop shrinking just to make others feel big. And you begin to ask different questions, not what do they think of me, but what do I think of myself? Not how can I be liked, but how can I be true? And this shift changes everything. You begin to live, not perform. You begin to choose, not react. You begin to lead, not follow. This is the kind of person Machiavelli respected. Not the schemer, not the tyrant, but the one who knew when to play the fox and when to become the lion. The one who understood that strategy is not the enemy of authenticity, but the ally of survival. That power and presence are not opposites of virtue. They are its protectors. So ask yourself, is your idea of goodness making you free or keeping you small? Are your values helping you thrive or helping others control you? If your answer makes you uneasy, that's okay. You're not alone. Millions of people are waking up to the same truth, that their kindness was never the problem. The problem was how it was exploited, and now they're reclaiming it. Not by becoming hard, but by becoming whole. In the next part, we'll begin to rebuild from this awareness. We'll talk about the practical steps, how to say no without guilt, how to set. Once you've seen the truth, you cannot unsee it. You can no longer pretend that being endlessly nice is a virtue. You can no longer shrink for comfort, betray your voice, or decorate your pain with a smile. Something inside you has changed, not just a thought, but a frequency. A deep, inner knowing that says, I can no longer live like this. So now comes the next step. Not just awareness, but action. Because it's not enough to understand why your kindness became a cage. You must also learn how to break free. And the first act of liberation is this: reclaiming your right to say no. Not as rebellion, not with anger, but with clarity, calmly, firmly, without apology. Saying no is not about being rude. It is about being responsible for your own energy. It is the most sacred act of self-respect. It draws a line between what you give and what you no longer tolerate. You will feel guilt. That is normal, because for years, you've been rewarded for compliance. You were taught to equate self-sacrifice with love. To be good meant being available, agreeable, and easily accessed. But here is a truth you must remember. Guilt is not always a moral signal. Sometimes it is just the echo of old programming. So when you feel it rising, don't run. Stay. Breathe. Let the guilt pass through. And remember, every time you say no to what depletes you, you are saying yes to what restores you. The second act is this. Observe who resists your change. When you begin to assert your boundaries, pay close attention to who complains. Those who benefited from your silence will call your clarity selfish. Those who relied on your compliance will feel threatened by your voice, but don't mistake their discomfort for your wrongdoing. Their reaction is not your responsibility. It's just feedback, an honest reflection of how useful your submission once was. This is where many people fall back into old patterns, afraid of being misunderstood, afraid of being alone. But hear this, you are not losing people. You are losing roles that were never real. You are shedding dynamics that were based on your absence, not your presence. You are making space for relationships that are mutual, respectful, and whole. The third act, stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You don't need to write a monologue every time you choose yourself. You don't need to soften every edge of your boundary so others can feel okay. Your life is not a courtroom. You don't owe anyone a defense for being alive, for being clear, for saying, I don't accept this anymore. Machiavelli understood this. He didn't say, abandon your values. He said, be wise about when and how you show them. He taught us that image matters, not as performance, but as a tool. Because perception creates influence, and influence creates protection. So present yourself clearly. No more mixed signals, no more giving with resentment, no more smiling through disrespect. If you want to be respected, show what you stand for, not in words, but in boundaries. And if someone asks, what changed? You simply say, I did. I stopped betraying myself. The fourth act, stop trying to be understood by everyone. This is one of the deepest wounds of the people pleaser, the need to be liked, validated, seen as good. But not everyone will understand your journey. Not everyone deserves access to your truth. You are not here to be digestible to all. You are here to be true, and that will make some people uncomfortable. Let it. Your loyalty must shift from the image they created of you to the reality you are finally becoming, from their comfort to your clarity, from their expectations to your evolution. That is not selfishness. That is integrity. The fifth act, replace the hunger for approval with a commitment to authenticity. There will be moments when you disappoint others. Let them be disappointed. You are not their dream. You are your own soul in motion. You do not exist to keep their illusions intact. You exist to live fully, deeply, honestly. And the more you commit to truth, the more peace you will find. Not from avoiding discomfort, but from honoring what's real. Not from being liked, but from respecting yourself. That's the shift, from performance to presence, from pleasing to power, from what do they want me to be to who am I really? And the answer to that question isn't something you find, it's something you build. Every no you say with love, every limit you draw with grace, every truth you speak with trembling but steady voice is a brick in the foundation of your true self. And one day, you'll look back, not with regret, but with reverence, for the version of you that finally said, enough. For the moment, you chose to stop being merely liked and started becoming free. Because as Machiavelli warned us, the world does not respect those who ask for permission to exist. It respects those who live with intent. There is one final truth you must face, one that may sting at first, but if you let it in, it will liberate you for life. No one is coming to save you. No one will knock on your door, hand you your worth, and say, you've done enough. You can stop sacrificing now. That moment never comes. Not because you are unworthy, but because the world has grown far too comfortable with your silence. As long as you are willing to be used, someone will be willing to use you. As long as you keep giving what you do not have, someone will keep taking. As long as you continue shrinking to fit others' expectations, you will keep disappearing in your own life. And still, you wait for someone to thank you, for someone to rescue you, for someone to say, "Now you can rest." But here is the brutal and freeing truth. You don't need anyone's permission to stop suffering. You only need your own. Because the need to be good has become your cage. The fear of disappointing others has become your chain. The craving for approval has kept you obedient, small, and invisible. And perhaps worst of all, you called this prison virtue. You mistook endurance for strength, tolerance for love, passivity for grace. And now, something inside you is screaming, "No more." You are not tired because you did too much. You are tired because you did too little for yourself. You are tired because you kept choosing peace over truth, harmony over boundaries, kindness over clarity. You gave away your fire for approval, and now the coldness within you is asking to be seen. So here we are, the final question, and only you can answer it. Do you want to be loved? Or do you want to be free? Because the two are not always the same. Being loved, in the way the world often offers it, comes with conditions. Be quiet. Be sweet. Be useful. Be small. But freedom? Freedom asks for honesty, integrity, boundaries. And yes, sometimes it comes at the cost of being misunderstood, disliked, or even rejected. But tell me this, what is the point of being loved by everyone if you no longer love yourself? What is the point of being seen as kind if you can no longer recognize your own reflection in the mirror? This is your awakening. This is the line in the sand. This is the moment you stop performing, stop pleasing, stop begging for crumbs of validation. You were not born to play small. You were not born to be agreeable. You were born to be real, to be whole, to be fully, unapologetically alive. And that means making the hardest, most sacred choice of all. To be who you truly are, even when it costs you the approval of those who only loved your silence. You will lose some people. You will lose some comfort. But what you gain will be yours, not borrowed, not conditional, not earned through exhaustion, but claimed through truth. This is what Machiavelli was trying to tell us, not to abandon morality, but to stop letting it be our leash. To understand that strategy is not evil, boundaries are not cruelty, and choosing yourself is not betrayal. It is healing, it is clarity, it is coming home. So now I ask you, when was the last time you said no without guilt? When was the last time you made a choice for yourself without asking who might disapprove? When was the last time you felt truly, deeply free? Leave your answer in the comments. I want to hear your moment, the moment you stopped being the nice one and started being whole. Because you are not alone. There are thousands, millions who are waking up just like you. And your story, your voice, your truth might be the spark that helps someone else awaken too. If this journey spoke to your soul, subscribe to this channel. We are building something different here. A place where kindness does not mean weakness, where boundaries are sacred, where healing is not soft, it is sovereign. This is stoic and still, and this is only the beginning.